All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting for September 23rd, 2020 to order. The time is now 6 o'clock. First up is our roll call of our council members, and I'm going to go slow so you can unmute. So, Council Member Aaron Moberg is excused this evening. Council Member Gary Molinar.
Here.
Council Member Melissa Beaton.
Here.
Council Member Mark Hulst. Council Member Mary Hudson. Oh,
Here.
I saw your mouth move, Mark. Council Member Iris Carillas.
Here.
Council Member Richard Brocksmith.
Here.
All right, thank you so much. Under our consent agenda, we have items A, B, C, D, and E. It's committee meeting minutes, regular council meeting minutes, payroll checks, claims, wire transfers, and a resolution number 982.
I move the adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. A motion by Mark. Is a second by Mary?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. Under reports tonight, first up is our review of our emails from the public. And so I'm going to ask Peter Donovan to go ahead and read the public comment tonight. Peter.
Thank you, Mayor, and hello, Council. A couple weeks ago, we had, I think, 6 letters. This week, we are turning it up to 11. And for those who are watching at home, if you want to join in on the public comments and address City Council, the way to do that is to send an email to council@mountVernonWA.gov. And that's the way you can participate and be heard by Council. So those emails are read every second and fourth Wednesday. So the first of 11 letters is from Linda Bishop. And she writes, "Dear City Council members, I'm writing a public comment in support of our Mount Vernon City Library. As you know, libraries are extremely important to low-income families. As a retired teacher, I saw the effect of lack of books on the reading abilities of children who did not have access to books at home. 2 of 3 children living in poverty have no books at home. With school libraries closed, our library is even more important as a source of books and as a gathering place when it is allowed. I was a bit surprised to learn that library staff is operating with 54% fewer staff than in 2019, which is the largest decrease in the county and larger than 94% of library districts in the state. Despite these cuts, curbside services continue to grow and are very much appreciated by my husband and myself. If our library is to be able to serve our community, it is essential that when funds become available, library services should be restored. Sincerely." The next letter is from Serene Wells. And she writes, "Dear City Council members, almost anyone who's a real reader will tell the story of how they got hooked on books. Many of those stories start with a library. Here's mine. I was 12 years old the summer of 1960. I could read just fine, but I wasn't a reader. I'd never read a whole book until that summer when my family moved to a town big enough to support a library. I still remember climbing the steps to the brick building, sweaty from riding my bicycle. The librarian, old by my estimation at the time, sat in the center of the front room, high on a stool. I felt like I was trespassing until she smiled down at me, and then I asked if she had any kids' books. She got off that stool, led me downstairs to shelves of books, pointed out her favorites, told me about library cards, and that with my own, I could borrow 2 books. She left me to myself in the cool basement, gave me all the time in the world, and that was the beginning. I borrowed 2 Nancy Drew books, gobbled them up, checked out more, moved on to the Hardy Boys, read at least 30 books that summer, and in September, with the help of that lovely librarian, discovered Jules Verne. The rest, as they say, is history. I would major in English. Though I wouldn't go around the world in 80 days, I would travel the globe as an international stewardess, become a reading specialist in schools, and earn a PhD in reading and writing instruction. I would lead a literate life. The genesis, it was that summer in the library under the tutelage of a wise librarian. A lot has happened since I first visited the library. Our society has changed, our needs have grown, and yet somehow libraries have adapted to meet the challenges of the 21st century. There will always be children who will forever be enriched by the library and the services it offers. The library is a promise to their future. City leaders might consider slowing or halting library funding until the financial crunch has passed. Children, however, cannot wait for that. The library is at the core of our community, its values, its functionality, and its future. Please don't cripple it. The next email is from Cliff Williams. Any plan for opening City Hall? I see the city of Burlington has opened. Cliff Williams. The next letter is from Scott Correa. Honorable Councilmen, I'm just reading what's written here. Honorable Councilmen, this evening you will have before you the opportunity to strike down a poorly crafted ordinance proposal. On the surface, an ordinance allowing faith-based organizations the opportunity to provide overnight safe parking to up to 6 vehicles looks like a no-brainer, good thing, but the reality is quite different. This ordinance does not allow camping to occur for 6 vehicles on church property. Instead, it creates a limit of 6 vehicles to faith-based organizations who previously had unrestricted parking access for homeless campers. This ordinance does not rise to the level of response to an emergency. Unless the emergency was potential heartburn for the neighbors living near places this ordinance would regulate. By focusing this ordinance on faith-based organizations alone, the city is positioning itself to be dictating to faith-based organizations how they are allowed to use their legally owned and controlled property to minister to their flock. This focus is quite disturbing to me and leads me to a few questions. Number one, if Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, why do we think it is a great idea to prohibit the free exercise of it within the city of Mount Vernon with this ordinance? Two, if this is such a good idea, exactly why is it limited to faith-based organizations? We shouldn't be blind to the fact that Walmart has a national parking lot customer overnight parking policy. Why does this ordinance intentionally remain silent on non-faith-based organization members of the community? Three, what emergency? RCWs define emergency in many locations, and the most generous of them I could find is this: emergency, as used in RCW 38.52.430, means an incident that requires a normal police, coroner, fire, rescue, emergency medical services, or utility response as a result of a violation of one of the statutes enumerated in RCW 38.52. Homeless parking clearly does not meet this generous description of an emergency. The next letter is from Heidi Epstein. Heidi writes, hello, I will begin by thanking you all for the work you do for our city. I am writing to express my concern about the possibility that our city library will not open until July of 2021. I am concerned about this important source of information and books being unavailable during the school year at this time. Our kids are unable to go to school or use their school libraries. It seems that many communities have been prioritizing all facilities to support the education of our children during this COVID-19 time, and the library seems to be a facility that is doubly important for this support. I will also add a plug for the basic pleasure of any library goer of any age. I am 76, so I have, lucky, been using a library for almost 70 years, and I am really missing the bi-weekly chance to go to the library just in case I might find something of interest while there. Please prioritize the funds necessary to reopen our library. Thank you. The next letter is from Ashaya Kaven. I should have practiced names before I read these out loud. My name is Ashaya, and I am a homeowner and resident in Mount Vernon. I believe that it is the job of government, even in a smaller town like our own, to do its very best to protect those with the least amount of power, including our unhoused brothers and sisters. Because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, that has had far-ranging and devastating economic impact across the globe and even in our beautiful community, it is prudent, kind, and in our best interest to help people who don't have permanent traditional shelter by adopting new business item C, allowing safe parking. I know if I was experiencing homelessness right now, I would be terrified to sleep in a traditional shelter crowded with people all night and with no access to affordable health care if I were to get sick. Unfortunately, this is the only real option for some, but for those who do have a vehicle, that is clearly the safer choice under our current circumstances. And for many people, including gender nonconforming people or those with pets, the safer choice all of the time. I encourage the council to adopt the interim regulations and thank them and my fellow citizens for their time. The next one is from Hal Verrill. Council members and mayor, my name is Hal Verrill, president of the Mount Vernon Library Foundation. I know you will be considering this evening an interlocal agreement with the county to extend library services to residents of unincorporated areas of Skagit County. My hope is that this brings to the top of your collective minds the value of that the library delivers to our community and the services that they provide. The pandemic has precipitated a very unfortunate need to cut the library budget and staff to a bare bones level. In spite of this, we have seen a library organization that has been innovative and creative in finding ways to continue to provide services to our community. The foundation has tried to the best of our ability to provide support for the job they're doing. This interlocal stretches that service and materials delivery for what seems to be a very meager investment on the part of the county. Nonetheless, we support this agreement and firmly believe no Skagit County resident should be left behind when it comes to access to library services. But we do hope that this fosters further cooperation between the city and county in the effort to secure the proposed site and funding for the new library commons. The foundation has not given up its belief that despite pandemics and economics, that our community needs a new library facility. A library defines a community and is a beacon of hope and an invaluable resource for residents of all ages and ethnic and economic backgrounds. We will come out of this crisis in a stronger community, and the foundation encourages your support in continuing to support the library in Mount Vernon. A great city deserves a great library. Respectfully submitted, Hal. And another one here, this one's from Suzanne Butler. Dear Mayor and Council, limiting temporary homeless shelters and safe parking to churches hasn't worked. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is the only one that stepped up, and they can no longer provide a cold weather shelter. It's complicated and difficult and just not what churches are able to do. Please consider broadening the base of possibilities for needed temporary shelters, county, school district, and/or hospital properties as you re-up the ordinances tonight. The unhoused must be sheltered during extreme weather, and I am hoping you will look at every possibility rather than limiting shelters to churches. Thank you. Another letter here from Scott Correa. Honorable Councilmen, I rise in support of the cold weather shelter ordinance. On its face, it is a good idea to create a framework of requirements to make sure that shelter is provided in a safe and secure manner. While I normally do not feel governmental intrusion into social service operations of groups is a good thing, this framework creation and permit, while an intrusion, is not outside the limits of reason. I do have a couple of observations that may improve things and ask your consideration of them. Number one, timeliness of an emergency response is crucial to a good outcome. Understanding that, perhaps issuing the occupancy permit for an emergency event well in advance of the event has merit. Those groups who are in a position to help have decided to do so far in advance of the cold weather event. Understanding that, perhaps the ordinance could be changed to issue the occupancy permits in advance of the event and cause activation of the permit based on the mayor's weather emergency proclamation. This would save much front-end time for the service providers would be placed in a needlessly created time crunch. It shouldn't be rocket science to do so. Number two, Perhaps it would be a good idea, to the greatest extent possible, to station a fire engine at a larger site. Even if unmanned, this would reduce response times if road conditions limit emergency apparatus travel. This is probably outside the ordinance scope, but is worthy of discussion. And with that, I ask Council to this proposed ordinance. From Andrea Heath. Thank you for addressing both of my concerns. I know you have been working with 2 mental health clinicians in conjunction with the Compass Health Program Manager, Marla Johns. These clinicians meet our officers at the scene where needed and have been doing so for the past couple of months now. High praise should go to Detective Anweed for getting this started. I would like to hear your impressions as to how that is going and if you have seen value in this type of collaboration yet. My second concern is one of police oversight. I know I can trust our wonderful officers, their supervisors, and chief. I know I can trust our neighboring police departments to also step in when oversight is needed in any given situation. However, I also know human nature, and if we as humans, if we can make our workload lighter or side with the easiest option, we will. Left to our own device, humans will not look too closely into any situation if it means risking a good working relationship. Therefore, it is inappropriate for police, quote, insiders to police themselves. It places these insiders in an unreasonably awkward position with their peers, especially when they rely on each other for their very safety. What, if anything, is being done to correct this current oversight process? And finally, a letter from Norma Jean Young. To our Mount Vernon Council members, I'm writing in support of our town and our Skagit Valley, becoming even more of a living example of a moral and ethical place to live. Our soft circle of concern and support is a sincere and loyal example of city government working together with its citizens. We want to help and contribute. I am Norma Jean Young, a pioneering health care provider instructor for medicine. I was a paid guest lecturer on the osteopathic residents of our own Skagit Valley Hospital a few years ago. I am so happy to live here now, doing the best I can for us to become even more of a wholesome community than we are. My larger work in the world is as a wisdom-keeping grandmother. Our job is really holding life whole with the boots on the ground actions to do this. I support the 2 goals presented by Andrea Heath. We as a citizen group, I call a soft circle, have remained steady in feeling these 2 implementations would upgrade the total outcome of humane and just treatment to all peoples. Number 1, add social workers and mental health clinicians to our police department. And 2, find a different way to oversee the police department during acts of possible wrongdoing. Regarding number 2, I suggested at our first meeting with the mayor that presence of women, grandmothers in particular, can sort out the stickiest of situations rather fast. We are seasoned as peacemakers and finders of practical solutions. I suggest we explore ways to implement this innovation. My report of current actions, Action 1, is a follow-up on connecting our leadership with our local indigenous tribe, the Swinomish. I recently visited the Swinomish Reservation to meet and converse with their leadership, new and old. Their offices are closed due to COVID. I obtained their names and numbers and am now pursuing conversation with them. I told Mayor Jill that I wished to bring the Swinomish leadership to meet with her. While I know their spiritual elder well, he is quite busy, answering calls around the country for help in recovery programs. Their current leadership is new territory for me to meet and ask what they wish in this regard. He aimed me there. This is a goal in progress. My relations are tried and true there. I'll keep on this effort. I'm happy to use any sincere experience with Indigenous tribes for us to acknowledge and gain practical wisdom from the people of this land. Action 2, I am asking Sister Lucy Curian if she would be interested in meeting our local leaders to brainstorm possible programs to meet our community's needs. Sister Lucy is my dear friend and valiant servant of humanity. She has inspiration and suggestion as to how to implement programs for homelessness, poverty, mental health provision for families. This would be a win-win relationship. Sister Lucy is the Mother Teresa Award winner in Pune, Indiana. In Pune, India. Big difference. She has over 1,000 children, hundreds of women, and now men she cares for. She has 49 homes in India and has investigated over 600 self-help groups. Her English and bright disposition are totally infectious. After visiting her in India for 40 days, I came away with two qualities of how she does what she does so well: inclusion and celebration. So, my neighbors, thank you for listening to a grandmother's efforts to grow our town in integrity and positive function. I look forward to our co-creation. I've taught natural healing at Harvard and other medical centers, mentored young change makers at Quest University, Squamish, BC, Canada. Having turned 75 recently, there's a lot more. I'm old, I've done a lot, and it seems our deepest, most influential work is yet to come. I join you as long as the powers that be allow me to carry this body around. Norma Jean. That is all of the public comments, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Peter, for reading those. And thank you those who sent in comments. I do want folks to know I try and respond, or our staff responds to all of them, and wanted to ensure those that have felt either the library has been shut down or budget cut. It's really due to the pandemic phasing. You know, we're not allowed to open until phase 3. And so we're diligently, and our staff is amazing on sort of the takeout version of the library. So hopefully that good information got out to those folks. So, okay, thank you. Moving on to item B, since we're kind of combining committees and council meetings, we've got our Parks and Enrichment Services update. So Director Jennifer Berner is here, and she's going to walk through council on the update on our Parks and Enrichment Department. Jennifer.
Evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me get going. Are you guys able to see that okay?
Yep, looks good.
Great. Okay. So I am excited this evening to share with you a parks update on all the great things that are happening out in our parks. And to get started, wanted to share with you some projects. So over and above all of just being cut back on the number of hours and such that we have, we've also been able to accomplish some projects along with just our daily maintenance of the parks. So we've done, finished out the Little Mountain parking lot project. So this one was where we went in once the contractor was out of there, and we were able to put in the wheel stops, build a fence, put the kiosk up, put a lot of those finishing touches on the Little Mountain parking lot, which is being used quite heavily. So it's wonderful that we got it open before the end of the summer. We also worked with the library, and our staff created and built the 4 little libraries and then installed them all. So that was another project that the library director and I kind of brainstormed on some things, and we're able to make that happen this summer. We've also been coordinating through the summer. We coordinated with the pickleball courts contractor. We got that one all wrapped up, and then staff came in and they laid all the concrete. So all of this concrete space in through here, our staff laid all of that concrete and did all the work to put all of that down. They also are installing or updating the lights there as well. Maddox Creek, this was a project that we tag teamed with our Public Works Department and Skagit County. And we were able to get that project to completion, help get that project to completion. The hanging baskets, so there's 65 hanging baskets that go up downtown, and our park crew are the ones that put those up, keep them watered. Now, we did have a lot of volunteer help from our downtown association this summer to help keep the baskets watered. And then we are in the process of going to be taking those baskets down in the next couple of weeks and getting them back out to Channel View so they can replant them for next year. Another project we're looking at is refurbishing our gateways. So one of the things that we're looking at is, are there better ways that we could have our gateways look a little more pleasing, but also be less maintenance? So staff and I are taking a look at those different gateways. This one right here, where it got hit by a car a little while ago, we've got a new sign up front. And so staff has gone in to clean this up. And as you can see, we've taken all the shrubs out. And so we're going to be looking at what we can put in there that would be lower maintenance and look really nice. This here with the Mount Vernon on both sides of that Kincaid Gateway, we'll be looking at that and coming up with some ideas. Different planter beds that we have along roadways, we're taking a look at those as well and seeing what we can do. It's kind of a win-win. It'll have an opportunity for us to kind of spruce some things up, but also maybe reduce some of our maintenance as well. So we're also working with our, let's see here, Parks Foundation, excuse me on that, our Parks Foundation, Trail Builders, and the Evergreen Bike Alliance. So this is the bike skills course. We just got this in today from them of what they're looking at trying to get opened up. We're working with them on some signage right now, but this is the new lower parking lot right here. And the trail entrance, which if you come into the lower parking lot, when you look to the left, you'll see a trail entrance that comes in that's all rocked out. So it's very defined. And if you take that on up and then go to the right, there's some trails that they've got pretty close to getting opened up. So like I said, we're working with them on some signage, and hopefully we can get some of those trails opened up here in the next couple of weeks.
Council, as we go through, if you have questions, just feel free to jump in.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to interrupt. We also, the art sculptures that you guys approved, we actually got them all installed. The last one got installed today, and that was the fish vein, and it actually rotates on the top. So we did ask the artist, since we had some pretty strong winds today, do you think it's going to work out, or is through strong winds, or we're going to have to go and remove it? And he said, nope. So it is turning and looking wonderful. So it was a great day to put it up. The halo and the goddess are both in as well. And we were able to, the one that we did not have a camera on was the fish vein, but I was able to connect with our IS department, and we currently got a camera on Friday to point, it's updating a camera on the lodge with a new camera lens on it. So it now will show us the fish vein. So all three of them all have, are viewable by our cameras, so we can see if anything ever occurs with them. So due to COVID, we've had to come up with some new signage to help folks understand how to utilize their parks. You know, we still want people using the parks, we just need to have them use them in some different ways. So we came up, when we opened up the playgrounds a couple weeks ago, we came up with some new signage that we put up in all the playgrounds, and wanting to keep the signage not being scary and keeping it as positive as possible. So our signage is in Spanish and in English, and basically saying, play it safe, giving them cues to remember to mask up, use hand sanitizer, that our playgrounds are not sanitized, wash their hands, if they're feeling sick, to please, you know, not be out in public. We also have these large signs that we printed up, and they're at all of our parks. Tried to put them around places where people gather, like at restrooms and different places that we know people kind of congregate. Again, it's just telling people how to use their parks in this new normal that we have, letting them know to social distance, you know, it's put a mask on, all those kinds of things. We also have a flyer that we printed up that we are able to put in our staff's hands. So when they're out talking to the public and people say, well, why can't I do this? Or what phase are we in? Or what can't we do? They're able to hand them this flyer, and the flyer is able to kind of help staff explain to them what phase we're in and show them just how much we are able to do, but yet we still need their cooperation in certain areas. Some other signage we were able to get up, this is the kiosk that we got built at the Little Mountain lower parking lot. So we put one of those large COVID signs up, and then we also have our Park Smart signs, again, trying to make the signage not scary, but relay an information, making sure people don't leave their valuables in their cars when they're out enjoying Little Mountain Park. So we've got them on some on the fence that's out there, at some of the gateways going into the trails, and then also over by the trash cans and stuff. We didn't want to litter the park with signs, but put them up again at some key locations.
Hey, Jennifer, I have a question.
Yes.
You know, on those signs that were, go back one more.
Yeah.
Okay, in phase 2, which we are in, I know we were having some issues with volleyball. Well, volleyball is listed in phase 2. So what are we saying there if we're concerned about that? And because to me, it kind of looks like that's a go.
So that's a really good question. Volleyball, if they're doing it right, is okay. The problem with volleyball that we were having here at Hillcrest Park was they were bringing large numbers of people. It wasn't just 4 or 5 people on one side of the net and 4 or 5 people on the other side of the net, which would have been okay. It's when you get 20 people congregating down there and you've got your volleyball game going on plus 20 people all congregating in the one spot, that was more the issue than volleyball itself. It was the gathering that was happening.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Update and park and facility use. So 5 out of our 8 restrooms are open to the public. Dog park is open. All 8 playground sites are open. All of our sport courts are open. The Bakerview Park gate is closed. We've gotten a lot of feedback in regards to that particular gate. And once I've been able to chat with folks and explain to them the reason why the gate's closed, they all understand. I had one gentleman who spoke to me saying, I'll close the gate for you, not a problem, or I'll open the gate for you and close it for you. And I said, well, that's a great offer. And opening it is super easy, but closing it presents a whole different challenge where our park staff right now people are not even paying attention to them when we're asking them to leave a park. And so when you get into the parking lot piece of Bakerview and people park their cars and they're out using the park, to try and get people to come back to their cars and get out of the parking lot by a certain time, that would just eat up a staff member's time, at least an hour or more, trying to get people out of the park. And this gentleman, once I explained that to him, went, oh, I understand now. I understand what you're talking about. It's not like you can just go up and lock the gate and lock all the cars in there. So just trying to get some education out about that to help folks understand the why. We're not doing it to be mean. We're just doing it because of our resources that we have available to us. The volleyball nets are currently down at Bakerview because that was an issue with large groups gathering there, not necessarily volleyball itself, but the large groups that were occurring. We are not having any special events through the end of the year, and the lodge and the Vokes Retreat Center, no rentals through the end of the year. So all of those have been canceled through the end of the year. So this has created some challenges and some positives for us as we've worked through this pandemic. So our staffing levels, we were down 500 hours a week through the months of June and September. So what makes up that 500 hours? We would have had 5 40-hour-a-week part-time park seasonals, full-time seasonals that we would have had working out in the parks during that time frame. We lost our one 7-month park seasonal, that's a 40-hour-a-week position. We lost one of our park laborer positions, which is a full-time position, and that's 40 hours a week. We lost our CWP assistant supervisor position, which was a 40-hour-a-week position. We also lost the CWP work crews due to the COVID. So there was each of the CWP staff would run a full work crew. That would consist of 6 to 10 people on 5 to 6 days a week. So that's a lot of volunteer time that we've lost. And we lost our graffiti crews. So these were 2 folks that came in 2 days a month and worked with our juveniles to do graffiti removal. So all of those things have gone away and we don't have those resources anymore within the Parks Department. So we had to kind of think of how are we going to retool ourselves. And so it challenged our staff to rethink some of our priorities and to think outside of the box. And I always think that's as challenging as it is, that can be a good thing. Not always doing things just because we've done them a certain way is not always the best approach. So it's made us stronger as a department, and it's begged many questions for us to say, well, why are we doing that? And I think it's got staff going in a really good direction where we're having great conversations right now about what should we do? What do we look like going forward? We're looking at, as I mentioned, redesigning some spaces to cut down on our maintenance. We're reshaping the recreation summer activities, as well as moving forward, we'll be reshaping the recreation side of the house. Building stronger relationships with our police and our park ranger, just due to the situations that are going on in our parks. And it's kind of put us in a situation to engage more with our public, where our staff are out having more conversations with the public, just due to people asking questions, or they're having to go up and have conversations with the public as they're out there. So we've been able to supply staff with talking points, getting them more comfortable with engaging with the public, which again, I think is always a positive thing, because in talking with them, you can help educate, not only educate them, but maybe them educate us about a situation or something that's going on that we may not be aware of. So as much as it's been a challenge, I think there's also been some positives that have come out of this. So we've started the Arts Commission back up. We're doing some virtual Zoom meetings, and they were able to recommend the 3 donated art sculptures that you guys approved. Part of my conversation with them, due to our lack of staff for support of the Arts Commission, but wanting to get the Arts Commission back up and running, we are limiting them to kind of like one topic. Once we get that accomplished, then we'll move on to another topic. So it helps kind of streamline what we're working with on the Arts Commission. I think it also is going to help them get a few things accomplished as well. So we're at this point in time, since we had the art sculptures donated, it's a perfect time for us to now look at figuring out what is that template for plaques that we want to put in for all of our city art. So they are out inventorying all the art and looking at what ones need plaques, and also looking at what do we want the plaque to say, and coming up with a template and a font for all of those things. And then we're going to update the city brochure once we get all that new information into our database, and we'll get that updated, and we'll have a great new brochure hopefully sometime in 2021. So that is all I have to share with you this evening. Let me know if you have any questions or anything else that I can touch. Oh, one thing I wanted to touch base further on with you was our CWP program. We have a meeting set up next week with our assistant city attorney and police and parks to relook at that particular program. We've gotten notice that they might be getting close, the courts, to having some folks be eligible again to participate in CWP. And my predecessor, Bill, did a lot of good work in regards to developing policies around the CWP program, but that was pre-COVID. So we need to all get around the table and kind of relook at that and see what we have written up. Does it still work? Do we need to tweak it in some way to keep our staff safe as well as the people participating in the program safe? So that we have a meeting coming up, not next week, but the week after that. And so we're really looking at trying to get that program up and going whenever the courts have folks available. So with that, if you have any questions, I am here to answer any of them for you.
I just wanted to say that I'm delighted that that sign was replaced on the west side because I got to hear about that often. And it was when I drove by, I think it was last week, I just big smile on my face. It's like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's fantastic. It's done. Yay. Good job. And then when we were looking at the sculptures up at Hillcrest that we accepted, that fish vein is a lot taller than I had expected it to be. It's hard to when you don't have any kind of reference. And I'm glad that it's tall because if that thing does spin around, that could be somebody could get caught if they're really, tall. So, but that's really, I'm looking forward to going up and checking out the sculptures. That's fantastic.
Great.
Can I ask a quick question?
Certainly.
I'm wondering, first off, thank you for giving us an update on all of the fabulous things that our Parks Department is doing on a very, very limited budget, and that includes staff. I'm wondering about if I wanted to go to Bonnie Ray Park, where could I park? I know there's a driveway in there, but I don't want to infringe on, the renters that are in that house. But is it okay to park along there?
It is okay to park along the roadway right there, and you can park just off of the roadway onto the grass there. And there's some, it's still kind of, as it gets wetter, you might want to make sure that it's not too wet in there for whatever kind of vehicle that you're driving. But you can also park on 19th Street. It will get you on the other side, and we don't have a bridge across that yet. But that gets you to walk in from the other side, and there is some parking at that end street there on 19th Street.
Okay, thanks. I'll check it out.
Okay, any other questions for Jennifer before we move on? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. All right, our finance update is our finance director, Doug Valesky. Doug's here.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, council members. I do have a presentation to show, but before I started, I think the first on our agenda is Erin, Director Cater, to talk about something. So I will leave it to her.
Thank you. Mine's really quick. We have some council members who are participating in the city's medical program. And so I've drafted a resolution for you to consider that kind of outlines how council members can access our medical insurance. And I think it was included in the packet. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Any questions?
So we wanted to make sure we brought this forward before we put it on an agenda item. It's just simply something that's good policy that we just haven't done before. And thank you to Erin for bringing it forward. So any questions for council? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and put that on the next council meeting for action.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
Okay, am I Sharon?
Yes.
All right. All right, so the first, let's see here. A couple things I wanted to talk about today is just to give another update on COVID, our financial impact, and really just want to talk about our 2020 revenues, and then talk about our CARES funding, a spending plan for additional funds, and then our budget revenue projections for 21. So first of all, as far as COVID goes, I know last month we estimated that there was going to be about a $211,000 shortfall between revenues and expenditures. And I shared all the revenue estimates and also the expenditure reductions. And based off the revenues that came in this past month and the continued expenditure reductions, we can now forecast that there's no longer any shortfalls. So that's good news. So I wanted to just talk about that and then kind of give you an update on where we are with revenues right now. And then we can kind of talk about the rest of that other, how this is going to affect our budget for the end of the year and also for 2021 when we talk about revenues. So anyway, so this slide right here, we did just receive our September sales tax this morning. At just the notice, we haven't actually received the funds yet, so they're not posted, but just wanted to give an update on this. We did receive for the month of September, $706,000, another very good month of revenues for us. Looking over here in the last column, that's $5.7 million is what we collected to date for those first 9 months, and what that shows in the last few years at that same time what we've collected. So just a little lower than where we were at last year at this time. This last line is just an average. So as you can see, the big green line here, that is where we're sitting right now with the sales tax that came in. Didn't want to spend a lot of time tonight with actually going through and showing you all the graphs and all the metrics and by the codes, but I did put that out there. And remember, if it's in the detailed graphs and breakdowns, they're located in the Council iDrive under financial reports in 2020, and you'll find those out there if you're interested in looking at more of those. Okay, moving on, just looking at the entire general fund revenue through August, and this is only through August since we don't have a lot of things from the state. Nothing from the state is posted. We just received the notice today, have not received the funds, and since the month isn't over yet, I only forecast or showed this through August. So looking down here, we have about in the bottom right side, about just a little over $2 million collected this past month, and that's about $422,000 over what we collected last year at the same month. Overall, we collected $16.175 million, which is about $45,000 higher than we did last year. Wanted to remind everybody that included in this number is also that $897,000 GEMT money. So if that wasn't in here, this number would actually be a lot lower. Looking down here, our budget, not including, I took out all of the overhead charges and the transfers, but we're about $725,000 under where we should be right now collecting for the end of our budget. So we're down about 4%. And as you can see on the graph here, we're just under the blue. So hopefully we can make some of that up. Again, just not knowing what that sales tax revenue is going to do for the rest of the year, but that's where we are right now with the overall general fund. And again, just stop me if you have any questions on any of these things. The next few slides here, the ones you see all the time, here's our sales tax revenue again through September. We collected $706,000 this month in September, which is $54,000 higher than it was last year at the same month. So we're about $57,000 below our $7.8 million projection and where we should be right now. We've collected 74% of all of our sales tax revenue. So again, we're just a little bit under that green line there, graph to where we are right now with that. And property tax, we brought in about $50,000 last month overall, and those come in differently all the time throughout the month, so we can't really compare it with anything else, but we are about $50,000 over where we did last year at this time at $2.78 million. And since our property tax is higher, we were hoping it would be higher, so that is good. Through the year, we're about $28,000 above where we should be with using our balance, our budget. So we are, again, just looking right where we belong. We're going to get another big hit here in November, but we're about exactly where we need to be right now with property taxes. And then TBD, we collected another good month for TBD. Just like sales tax, we collected $166,000 this month. Overall, we collected $1.3 million. We're just about exactly where we need to be to reach that $1.8 million, providing those sales don't go down in the next few months. So that's where we're sitting right now with that. And then REIT, we had another really good month with real estate excise taxes. We collected almost $170,000 this past month, which is about what we did last year at the same month. So overall, right now we collected 1.14 million. And again, we're above about $73,000 of our $1.4 million budget. And then Lyft. This one's just really complicated to explain here because of, as everybody knows, we do have a $500,000 cap on what we can collect each year, but it's each state fiscal year, not what the city is, not the calendar year. So last year, on the bottom right here, you can see August and September we collected. We also collected in October, November, and December for a total of $252,000 last year. And as soon as we hit March here, that's when we reached our $500,000, so it stopped. And then in July is the new state fiscal year, so it started up again. So we've collected another $80,000 this month. So I foresee we will, and again, if we don't reach 500,000 this year with the states, their fiscal year will still continue on into our 2021. So it's just interesting keeping track on that. But we're right where we need to be with this one also. So any questions on any of our revenue, where we are with revenue at this point in the year?
Okay, great.
All right. If not, I will move on with coronavirus relief funds. So as everybody knows from last time, the city of Mount Vernon was awarded an additional $536,100, amending our current contract for a total of $1.6 million. We did just receive the amended contract today, and so I will bring that forward to council for approval on October 7th. Also, the contract end date has been extended from October 31st to November 30th. So that's good news. That gives us a little more time to make all of our expenditures, and then we can request those funds. So with that, and Mary, you can step in whenever you want to here, but the city is requesting approval on a spending plan tonight so we can move forward, so we can meet that deadline. So again, our spending plan here, we do have additional CARES Act allocation of $536,000. We have about $66,000 of staffing that we could use some of that money for to reimburse some of the times there. IT's putting a lot of time in, and TV10, poor Candy, she's just working there all the time. We got to get her some help there. There's an outdoor payment kiosk that I'm very excited, so you guys can ask me all the questions you want on this. It's about $75,000, and then there's a 3-year maintenance. I can go into more details, but that brings it just under about $85,000. And then a remodel costs of about $85,000, which leaves us about $300,000 that we would use for the small business grants. So any questions on any of this before we move into more detail on them?
So the detail that's coming is Doug will share about the payment kiosk, and then Peter's got some things to share on the small business grants and how we would move forward with that. Just really quick on the IT staffing, that's pretty self-explanatory with all the things that council we talked about in our prior allocation of CARES funding. Staff will be really busy just getting that up and running. TV staff funding, what that dollar amount is reflective of bringing Keith Kingsling back. He's been on furlough this entire time. And so Candy and a part-time staff have been literally like running the entire show. Kudos to Candy, amazing job, but she does need some relief. And so we would bring Keith back and be able to pay some of his salary with the CARES funding because of that. And then administration just is kind of everyone across the board, whether it's Chris running some of the remodeling work or my staff or Peter or, you know, all that just kind of is a combination in there. The remodeling costs, so we had HKP Architects come in last, what day are we on? Sorry, last Thursday, I think. And just to give us ideas and say, like, is there anything we can get done if we have time to do it? And so they're preparing some information for us as well. So that remodeling cost number could go down just depending on if we think it's realistic to get something done or not. And I think we'll have a lot more to share in detail on that on October 7. Any questions so far? I'll ask Doug to talk about the kiosk if you'd like. Okay, go ahead, Doug.
All right. Well, here's a picture of what that kiosk looks like. And overall, I've been doing a lot of research. I've been talking to other cities that have been using it. I've talked to the vendor at great lengths. The cities that they're very happy with it. A lot of them are actually getting more and to spread across their cities. But really, it's a lot safer for our customers and staff. So there's really no social distancing issues. It completely integrates. It's a smart kiosk. It completely integrates with our financial system, and all the updates are real time. And it accepts cash, credit cards, and checks. So that's good. And it can also, you can select different languages. That's one of the barriers that we feel really bad about in finance here, when we get a lot of customers who don't speak English, and we try to help them, and it's not always doesn't always go as best as we wish it could. So that's really helpful for that too. And then it's also approved funding from CARES money. So many cities are using them right now. Like I said, it's about $75,000 for the kiosk. That includes the machine itself, the software, all the setup, and the integration. They worked closely with our accounting software before, so they will be able to put that in pretty easily. And then there's about $9,000 for the 3-year maintenance contract. It's an online real-time support, so if there's it's connected to the vendor at all times. So at any time there's an issue with it or anything, they are notified immediately, and then they can take care of the issue for us. So I'm pretty excited about that. One of the main reasons I'm excited about it is I am down 1 staff at the front desk, and if we were able to have this and our customers could be using it, it's 24/7. They can come anytime they want of the day, and 7 days a week to make any payments. It would really help out a lot. I also included on here, and so when you have this presentation, I won't press these now, but I do have a couple links here that you can look at, one from the vendor and then also one from I was talking a lot with the treasurer from the town of Marshfield in Massachusetts, and how they're using it. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about it, and I really hope we can get approval on this, because I think it'll be extremely helpful for the city. So, and of course all the customers out there. So any questions on it that I might be able to answer?
I got a quick question, Doug. Hey, what's the security issue having that out front if somebody just backed up and grabbed it? I mean, well, like they do with the ATM machines. Would we have camera? I mean, I sound like I'm from England or something, but
yeah,
do we have a camera out there that would be kind of closest so you could see if people get frustrated?
Right. Yeah, no, I talked to Kim. We would make sure that there's a camera right on it. There's also a camera built into it.
Okay.
There is, except for like the cash that's in there, everything else is not, it's all up in the cloud. There's nothing housed in that system itself. So unless there's some cash in there, there's really nothing else they would get out of it. They have not had any issues really so far at all with anybody that's been using them. They're very secure. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Doug, what kind of bills would be on this system? Everything we do?
Well, for the starters, what we'd first do is just all of our utility bills, all of our utility billing. That's the first thing we would get up and going. Then we can look about if there's other things we wanted to do. Permitting has a little different system. We could spend some time to get them that we could use it here, but they kind of do all theirs already online already, so there might not be a lot of need for that. There's also things that other cities have been using it for, as far as beach permits or parking permits, that it doesn't spit out an actual permit, but it has a receipt that comes out that could be used as such a thing. Again, it tracks all the time. It does all the reporting that we get, and it's all real time. So there could a number of things that we could use it for.
And do folks have to bring like their bill with them, or do they enter in their address?
Yeah, no, very good question. Yeah, you can either have your bill and you have to put in your account number and or your zip code. It depends how we have it set up. The one I looked at, it was, yeah, you have to put in your account code and your zip code, and then your actual bill came right up. And then they have the choice on how much they want to pay and how they want to pay it, whether it's going to be cash, credit card, or check. And so it works pretty slick. It's they can usually do it well under a minute for each transaction.
And so you reminded us that you're a person down. And when is that going to be fixed? Is that a 2021 budget discussion?
Actually, it is not. That position is not funded for 2021. It's part of our, trying to make sure we have a good balanced budget, and this would be one thing that would really help out a lot, and to keep it there. So yeah, no, we're not planning on bringing that position back in 21.
We're replacing people with machines.
Yes.
So to speak, yes. That's a lot safer, and a lot of people won't have to be coming into City Hall and standing around, and a lot more convenient hours and stuff like that also. I encourage you to look at some of those links if you get a chance. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Mark, go ahead.
So Doug, I know that we do for the Parks Department stuff, we do rentals, we do field rentals and different things. Would those be able to be paid on this system over in time? Is that something we can integrate into this so that all those people, Hillcrest Lodge or the gazebo or pick whatever it is, would people be able to make that payment on here?
Depending on how, if we can set something up like in our accounts receivable system where it's something that we do an invoice, we should be able to handle something like that. I'm not really familiar exactly how parks, I think they have to sign contracts and put the deposits down and all of that. If there's a way we can arrange it somehow that way, yeah, there's many different ways you can do this.
Just to, on the park side, if we could take a look at it and see what might be available. All of our stuff is available. We have online registration now. So a lot of what they're able to do, they are able to access it at all hours. And then it's all coming in through our registration system, and we receipt in, and that way it stays in one database, which is easier for us when we go to do tracking and such. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take a look and see if there might be a way that it could work, but we currently do have something that works that way.
Maybe we need another one for the parks.
Hey, Doug, I got a question for you. Will it have the option of possibly at some point in time being able to, if people want to pay their court fines and fees, would that provide another location? Or I know the court system software is different. Is it something that would integrate with this?
I don't know. I can't answer that. It's something we'd have to look at. Again, I know it's a very smart machine. And it ties into the accounting systems that we have. We would have to look at inside our own to see if which system we use. Like we have our financial system, which is Tyler Cashiering. But then we also have right now where we have all of our bills go through a different system called Paymentus, where people can pay their bills online and that all of that comes through here also. This system will integrate with both of those. We can add more to them. I can't answer why, if there's any reason why not, but I'm assuming that yes, we probably could if we can integrate into that system, that accounting software.
That's fair.
We'll check it out.
I wanted to ask one other thing. You mentioned languages, and I might have missed how many different types of languages?
I don't.
I'm gonna look it up really quick.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know we can set up with several languages. This is drop screen, and then you can pick one, but I don't know if there's an actual limit on there.
Okay, well, you might have had me at languages.
Peter's
All of
gonna
them.
look that.
Oh,
Peter's
I
gonna
could-
look that up for us because I'm on their website now, and I'm sure we can figure that out really quick.
I just think it would be very helpful for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. I realize for council, this is an out of the box thought process for as far as for COVID, right? But we, of course, your staff is very resourceful. We want to take any opportunity that we can. And so Doug did talk with Department of Commerce and made sure that this was something that they would consider is COVID related. And so if the government, the federal government is willing to help us with infrastructure costs and things like this, that's why we brought this forward. So certainly council's choice, but that's the reason why it seems a little unconventional. However, definitely serves a function now with keeping people out of City Hall and in line and things like that. So,
I think some people will enjoy that ease and they can do this at any time. I think that's a bonus. And we don't know how long this situation is going to last. So we want to keep people safe, our staff and our citizens. So I think although it is an out of the box type of an idea, I think it's a good idea.
I thought we had a pretty good discussion about it last week, and I don't have any issue moving forward with the kiosk.
All right.
okay, any other thoughts? Okay.
Cool. Thank you. I will hand this over then to Peter.
Thank you, Doug. I was busy looking up kiosk
Oh.
language options. Was something else going on?
I'll take over. I'll take over.
Oh, that's fine. I'm ready to roll. So, council, you have we talked a little bit last week about some of the federal funding that's coming through. We discussed how the CDBG funding is separate from what we're dealing with tonight. The CDBG funding in the past, you've helped micro enterprises, small businesses of 5 or fewer employees. You've also helped with rental assistance. This separate CARES fund source is through the Washington State Department of Commerce, and it's specifically coronavirus relief funds for local governments. So you've talked a lot, worked with Doug and the mayor about addressing those local government needs, and at the end of that, found that there is about $300,000, and that one of the uses for this funding is small business support. And last week you indicated that's something you were interested in. So I did some work this week on criteria. I've worked with EDASC and with some other nonprofits in the city and some businesses, and we came up with this criteria. I'm going to run through this for you briefly, and then I've got a few questions for you on the next slide a little bit later that I would love to get some direction going forward so we can get this in motion and get this out to businesses that need it. The applicant criteria that we have right now, I guess it probably goes without saying that they would need to be able to demonstrate loss of revenue because of COVID-19. They would be within the city limits of Mount Vernon, 25 or fewer full-time employees, with priority given to locally owned, operated establishments. This is one that I have a question about a little bit later, but opening this up to nonprofit organizations and for-profit. And some of the reasoning there behind that, and that some of the people in the nonprofit sector brought this to our attention, that many of those nonprofits are called upon to help sort of allocate these funds, but they've also been impacted by COVID-19 and restrictions and all of those things. They have staffing and payroll and all of those items like a business does. And so considering those, some nonprofits also in this amount of this allocation. And then applicant requests grant amount, and that's based on real loss. So one of the challenges that EDASC discovered in the last round of funding was that when a business is filling out an application and when they get their award, say it's $20,000, they found that for some businesses that was more than adequate. In fact, they had a hard time spending that amount, and some could use far more than that. And so because of that, Doug, if you could jump to the next slide for me, please. Because of that, we came up with a formula to determine sort of the maximum amount awarded. And we did that by the number of FTEs times $2,000 would equal the maximum award. So sliding scale based on the size of the business. So that's a decision, though, that you can make. This is just a recommendation. And on these 4 points here, I would love some direction. The next one is, when we talked about nonprofits and for-profits, would they compete in that same pool? So if we were talking about $300,000 given out to our community, small businesses, would nonprofits be competing in that same pool with small businesses? Or do we say 200 set aside for businesses, 100 for nonprofits? That's something I would love to hear some discussion and get some direction on. The other is, will the city make any direct grants to nonprofits? Is that something you want to do? I heard a couple of nonprofits named specifically. Some of those are receiving funding from other sources, some aren't. But are there any nonprofits that you would want to specifically identify and fund? And then finally, who will be administering the process? Will that be eDesk? Again, is that something that you would like to see done in-house or by another organization? So open for questions and discussion, and please, direction when we get there.
Okay, thoughts for Peter?
I'll go first, I guess. Do we need to have decisions on a dollar figure? Let me see, I have to say this right. Can we see what people apply for before we make any decisions on if we need to have a separate pool for nonprofit and for-profit businesses? Is there a time frame that we're going to set for these applications?
The application process would likely be on a timeline. We may be able to, if council wanted to kind of get an overview of where the asking points were, what the price points were of the requests. Maybe we could review that along the way. Is that what you're asking, council member?
It is, yeah.
Okay. I think we could probably accommodate for that.
And then I guess when you asked about the grant process to be administered by eDesk or in-house, you know, I'm asking, is that something that you have the bandwidth? And I'm just talking about time. Okay, I'm getting a no, shaking of the head. Okay, so yes, I personally, I'm very comfortable with eDesk doing this.
Councilmember Hudson, I could definitely do it. However, I think eDesk has the benefit of having done this process for the county, for the city, in those past rounds. They're very familiar with the nonprofits and the businesses that have already been awarded, and have a good ongoing communication. They've sort of been the central clearinghouse for this. To me, they make the most sense, but I'm not trying to weasel out of anything. So if you,
no. But see, you gave me an option, so
Okay.
I had to push that a little bit.
All
I
right.
just wanted to get your feedback. So
Absolutely.
no, I'm totally happy with eDesk. They do a fantastic job.
They do.
Thank you.
I think it also allows some impartiality. So it keeps, yeah. So.
Good point.
I think having a third party administered is a good idea. That way there can't be any accusations of favoritism or retaliation against anybody. So I think it's a wise decision to go with third party. On the amount of the grant, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a cap on that. I know you've got $2,000 times the number of FTEs, but I'm wondering if there should be a cap on that or not, so that we can possibly help more businesses. Just an idea. And then the nonprofits. When you start looking at nonprofits, there's a number of them in the city, but I have to look at some of them and I say, you know, what's the city already given to those nonprofits through hotel motel, or you know, we could look at YMCA and say that's a nonprofit. We've got a contract with them. We're paying them a fair sum of money every year to provide services. There's a lot of the nonprofits that are receiving funds from the city already, from different sources, other than the CARES Act. So I'd probably want to limit the nonprofits that we would look at in that regard. If they're getting hotel motel money, Chamber gets a fair amount of money. They're nonprofit. You start looking at who's receiving those dollars, and then I'd question on if we're talking about a food bank or something like that, that may need some additional dollars to help provide for the less fortunate, especially coming into the wintertime. Those are discussions I think we should have. But if they're already receiving money from some other funding source from the city, I think we probably shouldn't make it available to those sources.
Any other thoughts on that one? Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark on that, that people shouldn't be able to double dip if they've already received funds. And so at least we can spread the net out a little wider to other people. And I also would like to have it go through EDAS, because I do think they already know the people that have been interviewed prior. So I mean, I think it would eliminate a lot of time and effort kind of wading through some of the different businesses.
So on the double dipping thing, I'm curious how other programs like the Paycheck Protection Program and EIDL loans from the federal government would be involved here, because I think that's one where we certainly don't want to be supporting things that have already been funded, but that starts to get very complicated on how much support do people need. But it seems like that needs to be a consideration. That's one. I'll stop for a second.
Agreed.
Richard, can I address that, Richard? So my thought on that is, everybody's applied for, or a lot of businesses provided or applied for payroll protection. That may or may not have to be paid back depending on what Congress decides. A lot of people got a disaster relief loan; those will have to be paid back. Those aren't the funds I'm talking about. The funds I'm talking about are, I want to say we gave or we provided, I think it was $110,000 to the Mount Vernon Chamber through our hotel motel tax. Should they then be able to apply for CARES money because they're a nonprofit? I don't think so. We've already given them a chunk of money to provide certain services for us through the hotel motel. I don't know what we've given to the Tulip Festival. I don't have the budget in front of me, but you look at the Tulip Festival, the Highland Games, and all the other nonprofits that are receiving funding from the city through our hotel motel or through other agreements, like with the YMCA. We've entered a contract with them through our parks, and there's a fair amount of money that goes to them. Should those organizations also be able to apply for these funds? And I feel like we're already providing funds for them, so we should be looking at a narrower window of nonprofits.
Maybe to address another part of your question, Councilmember Brocksmith, these funds wouldn't be eligible. The applicants would not be eligible for these funds for expenses that have already been covered by CARES Act funding. So, or any other source. So if their payroll had been covered, they wouldn't be able to identify that as a need on their application. So we would weed out some there.
Right. And then ones that are eligible, because not all their costs are covered, those would be eligible considerations, it sounds like. So that's great. On the nonprofit side, I mean, nonprofits obviously provide a service to the community. And as far as the hotel, motel, lodging stuff, those are usually project-specific dollars, not general operational support. And so nonprofits have been affected just like for-profit businesses in COVID and response to COVID. And most of this year's hotel, motel, lodging tax was actually not utilized because of the shutdowns and the Safe Start program. So I don't really see the reason to exclude them. I liked Mary's suggestion of seeing what comes in the door, because I think all these businesses are affected. My preference would be to increase the pot of money available to these kinds of programs so that we can cover more groups rather than limiting the number of groups that can benefit.
And And that maybe comes back to that formula because we've got a natural cap on the amount. So we have a maximum award of 50,000. That would be for an organization with 25 full-time employees, and that's the maximum amount that they would be able to be eligible for. So if 50 is not high enough or too high, that would also be something that we would need to talk about.
That was one of the areas I was talking about putting a cap on. I think a cap of 25,000 would be a fair cap. I think that still provides a significant amount of money to a company that has generated some expenses from the COVID, and I think it allows us then to split that into some other businesses that may need help also.
Is it possible to start with a cap of 25,000 for 25 employees, full-time employees, and then depending on what comes in for applications or for people asking for this funding, could we then adjust it later as we see things pencil out, if you will?
Absolutely. The criteria here is fairly wide open. So we would just change that formula to be number of FTEs times $1,000, and go from there and discuss it as the applications come in.
Melissa, I think, had something to ask. Yay! I just saw you. Sorry.
I'm working on being patient. No, I just wanted to throw out there that everything that everybody has said is absolutely spot on. The need is there and the need is great. There is a lot of pass-through money and money that we are able to use to help nonprofits. And when I look at this, and this time around, we're looking at over 50% of what we would be receiving, I would really like to see that go to our smaller businesses. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that we get the opportunity very often to help our small businesses, our for-profit businesses, our restaurants, and things like that. I mean, we've got businesses downtown that are struggling to get off the feet and to get, to keep going, and you're hit with COVID. So yes, the need is there and it is great. I just, my thought is that I'd like to see, obviously, all the applications that come in, but I'd like to see a fair share of that go specifically to our small businesses.
So I'd like to make a suggestion, and of course, I'm only one of 7 council members. So my suggestion would be is that we leave the formula at $2,000 per employee, but we cap the total grant at 25,000.
But then you would, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, you would only have 12 full-time employee as the maximum. Am I correct?
If somebody had 10 employees, they could still get a $20,000 grant. But we cap that. I mean, if they've got 25 employees, at the formula we have, that's 50,000. I still think a $25,000 grant that doesn't have to be paid back to a larger employer, while it helps, I just think we have to cap it at some level.
It makes more people eligible. Sorry, Peter. It makes more organizations eligible. Just reduces the amount that those larger groups could get, and it helps benefit more of those smaller groups. So I like the suggestion. Sorry, Peter.
No, and maybe the formula just complicates things too much, and maybe we remove the formula, we have the applicant demonstrate their need, and we consider that on a maybe a sliding scale based on their business size, but with a maximum award amount of 25,000. Is that getting closer?
That may be closer, yeah.
I think, remember, yeah, just like I think, Mark, you're going to go right where I was going to say that they do, part of the application is demonstrating the need. They have to kind of prove the dollar amount. So, yeah.
I feel comfortable with that first one. The second one, I heard a couple of different sides, but I don't know if we have council consensus there. or preference.
Yeah, I think we're kind of across around the
Yeah.
board on that one. I would still just like to see, what comes in basically before we make a decision if we need to separate, X amount of money for nonprofits, X amount of money for profits.
So I just did the quick math. If we did $25,000 maximum grants, and maybe not everybody would demonstrate the need for that, but we're talking 12 businesses. We're not talking a whole lot of people. So, my heart says we have to really help those that are creating the jobs and are paying the taxes. So that's just kind of my thought.
I'm just happy that we're able to help more people, with a wider parameter. So that makes me happy that there's not as many strings on it as the previous money that we had received. So whatever, I'm good. I'm glad we're helping more people.
This definitely is happy work. And remembering that we do have a second round of CDBG funds, which council gave some direction last week to do some rental assistance with that additional, I think it was 260,000 that will be coming soon.
Do we want to see what comes in? Would council want to take 300 and divide that? Just thoughts? Not sure.
So I guess the difficulty I'm struggling with here is I think we want to be as clear as possible up front so that the applicants have some certainty about whether or not it's worth their time to compete. And so leaving it sort of vague and then kind of making a decision later as far as how to split it out and if for-profits or not-for-profits can participate, I think is not a much of a service to them. So I do want to figure it out. I'm trying to be open and listening to people's opinions on it. There's not as much money here as we'd want, and 12 to 15 businesses is not that many businesses. I guess I could be persuaded on the not doing the not-for-profit. Alternatively, like I said, I'm not convinced the kiosk needs to come out of the CARES funding. I think that should come out of utility fees, and we should move forward on that. And we should put that money towards economic development of our key mom and pop businesses. My personal opinion.
I am comfortable spending the money for a kiosk. So that's my personal opinion. I think that we are helping people, and that's really where we came from. That was the decision of the council. I believe that we just wanted to be able to help as many people as we could. And if there's more money coming down the pike, that'll be great. We could just help more people.
Some of the nonprofits, I guess, that we had off the top thought about that could be eligible. Madam, maybe this helps you all. I'm not sure, but so the Mount Vernon Downtown Association, of course, is a nonprofit. Now we do pass along the B&O tax credit to them as well. As far as hotel motel, some folks have been did do some collections. We didn't receive as much hotel motel tax this year, so we are a little concerned about, number one, are we going to have revenue next year, and then even if they can be used. So it's really kind of up in the air on that. I know the Lincoln Theater Foundation is trying to spend some funding on some specifically redesigning lobby for CARES. So perhaps there may be some assistance we could offer there. Clearly, food banks. I know what Doug's going to show, I think, in his revenue projections is the increase in folks looking for temporary assistance to families or food issues. So being able to provide some funding to a food bank, I think, might be something council would be interested in. But you're right, the others do have some different, sources of revenue. Hospice of the Northwest Foundation is one that provides care for patients, in Mount Vernon and without the ability to fundraise. There's that type of care and need that could be there. So there's a few different nonprofits that just come to mind in the initial thought about who could apply. I don't know if that helps or makes it more muddy.
So on, Peter had mentioned that we have some CDBG funds coming in that we could utilize for helping with rental assistance, eviction termination, and those kind of things. Can any of that those funds be used for the food banks?
That's a good question. I believe it probably can. What I don't know is whether or not that would take an amendment to our con plan. I'm not sure, but I believe that if we really wanted to funnel that money and get it to a food bank, that we could do that.
Council, I believe could, and Kevin is going to have to correct me. So when we do allocations of direct funding from the general fund to say Friendship House every year and Skagit Domestic Violence, it's to help the poor and infirm. And so I believe we could even do a direct allocation to a food bank from the general fund if we needed to. Kevin and Doug, well, I should look at that too, but.
I would think we could probably do a budget amendment and adopt that. I don't know that that was a wise choice of places to take it, since we just went through and cut about $5.3 million out of a budget.
Right.
It'd be nice to be able to use some of these federal funds as a pass through to help all those that we can.
Absolutely.
It's an exception to the constitutional prohibition on gifting.
Mm-hmm.
But the Attorney General has also recognized you can use money if it's passed through. So grants are also an exception if they're otherwise allowed.
Well, Peter, you've given us a lot to think about.
I sure have.
So's the mayor. It's money it's grant money that's coming down from the federal government. It's taxpayers' dollars, regardless of how we look at it. I know for me, it's important to help a lot of the small businesses, especially those that are struggling and trying to keep families employed and keep their life savings working for them. On the other hand, there may be some organizations out there that truly need some help. When you talk about Hospice of Northwest and them not being able to fundraise, they provide a great service to a lot of folks in our community, and they do a great job. While I'd like to be able to give you a solid answer tonight on exactly what I think we should do, we may need to take a look at allocating some of those funds to those types of organizations that provide those end-of-life services or those care services to some of the most vulnerable in our community. So, while I'd like to say everything should go to small business, I think the mayor's brought up a couple of good points of organizations that could utilize that money.
How about if we did this for council? We could call, we can make a list of the nonprofits that we know, kind of serve Mount Vernon community specifically. We can make some calls. We can just sort of ask, where they're at, what their fundraising is like, what would be impactful for them, and just get some actual information from them to bring back to you on October 7. And that way, maybe that would be a little more clear. Maybe we call, I don't know, we call them downtown and they're like, hey, we haven't had events, so we're okay. Or, I don't know. We call the food bank and they say, well, we're doing fine, but 5,000 would be great. Like, so why don't we spend some time doing that for you? And then we can bring back a little bit more of the actual need from the nonprofit side. And we'll call as many as we can think of.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Sounds good.
I think it puts us in a difficult position because then we're reaching out to individual organizations and who do we call and who do we not call. The grant award kind of leaves the onus on other folks to apply for it, and it's a lot cleaner. So I'm comfortable thinking about if we have a goal of eviction prevention, well, there's only a few groups who are doing that, and we figured out the right mechanism to do it. If we're trying to fund food banks, we know 2 groups in Mount Vernon who are kicking butt on that, and we can direct allocate to them. I think we should just decide on what those priorities are, and then whether or not nonprofits are in this particular pool or not. Just trying to avoid any conflict, of who's getting called and who's not getting called.
So I think when you're talking about the rental assistance, that's all CDBG funds. Those are different funds than what we're talking about here. I think that the mayor and staff are wanting to provide the most services to the most people as possible. So I don't have any doubt that they would call all of the nonprofits that do good work in the city. So I fully trust the mayor and the staff to make those calls and give us an honest assessment of what those needs are. There may be some nonprofits out there that really don't need any money, but they know of others that do. So they could share that with us also.
My intent would be to focus on human service nonprofits. I should throw that out there too.
I think that was the gist of from the council.
Okay.
I believe was the human service side of things.
Okay, should make that clear. Okay, so I'm gonna give a read on the consensus of the council direction. We focus on 25,000 and kind of a maximum award for small business. We do a little more research on nonprofit need around the human services part of that. Definitely contract with EDAS to do that. And then we would bring forward decisions for October 7. I still think that gives us plenty of time to work, like proactively kind of have things teed up. So once that decision is made on October 7, really open up applications, get that going, fairly quickly. We'll have till the end of November to cut those checks. So I think that works fine for timing. Does that take care of the discussion for tonight for council? Okay, I see most everyone nodding. So Peter, did we miss anything on that?
I don't think so. That sounds great. Thanks, council. Thanks, mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward. Doug still on deck, and so he'll go forward with his 2021 budget information.
All right. Well, this is your first formal meeting on the 2021 budget. First of all, I just wanted to review the calendar with everybody. So tonight this calendar, by the way, follows the timelines and the process set up by state code. All I did is I moved everything up a little bit just to try to, and like we have been doing the last few years, just to make things move a little sooner. So anyway, so tonight we're going to review the revenue estimates with council. And then on October 7th, we will present council with a preliminary budget for 21, and we'll begin the review. And then on October 14th and the 21st, we're going to hold budget work sessions to review the preliminary budget. October 28th, City Council will hold a public hearing on the 21 revenue sources, including considerations of possible increases in property tax revenues, which we'll talk about a little later here. And then on the October 28th and October 30th, I'll publish a notice of filings of the preliminary budget and a notice of the public hearing on the final budget. And then on the 28th of October or November 4th, we could set the property tax levy for the ensuing year. November 2nd, copies of the preliminary budget will be made available to the public. And then hopefully on the 18th of November, we can hold a public hearing on the 2021 budget and adopt the budget right before Thanksgiving. So anyway, that is the plan, and we'll see how it goes. So again, right now, so today I'm going to be talking about the review of the financial estimates. first, let me just say that this has just been really fun this year. With everything that's been going on and trying to predict and what's going to be happening for next year has been a really a challenging aspect, but and a lot of sleepless nights. But anyway, just to go over what we have to do with our, we do have revenue policies that we have to follow. First is that current revenues will be sufficient to support current expenditures. Number two, calculated using an objective analytical process and will be neither overly optimistic nor overly conservative. And lastly, the estimates will be performed utilizing accepted analytical techniques and shall access the full spectrum of resources available to the finance city programs and services. So that being said, we do look at a lot of historical trends, looking at what's been happening in the past, and you know, this year it's been a little more difficult on making those trends work. But so we've been looking at a lot of different state resources that I'll go over a few of them tonight. And then there's also a revenue guide that comes out from MRSC that basically gives us some direction on what we should be doing, and it actually gives you the dollar amounts for a lot of the state money that's coming in. And then there's management input, and then we get a lot of input from other organizations, the counties, the cities, the other finance directors around here. We talk a lot about some of this stuff to see what's going on. So again, like I said, it's been really challenging this year, and but a few of the resources that we looked at, I'll just move on here. This one is from the Department of Commerce, and this is actually just came out, but it was updated in September 9th, but it's with the June data. And as you can see here, this one first is the whole city, or excuse me, the whole county, or the whole state, sorry about that, the whole state statistics. So like unemployment, looking here, they went down by, and this is from year to year, it went down for 5% and $191,000, or excuse me, 191,000 jobs. The unemployment rate for the state went up 6%. And then just looking at some of the other things about retail sales tax here, down 5%. Taxable business income down 12%. Export volume down 45%. And some of the support programs, you know, basic food participants, they went up 16%, or 129,000 people. And anyway, and then looking at what the county, if I click on the Skagit County, we get more of our statistics here. And as you can see here, our current level, our total employment dropped 4%, or about 2,000 jobs. Unemployment rate went up 7%. And then looking at retail sales, they actually went up 1%. And then some of those supportive programs and stuff that I know the mayor was talking about, we were looking at a little bit here, is the basic food participants went up 15%. A lot more people are looking for those kinds of resources. And then also the temporary assistance of needy family, the TANF participants, they went up 48%. So, and then credit card usage went down 9%. So there's a lot of information of things, and there's more stuff that to back this up that we look at. But again, one of the things that I said here is that this was updated September 9th, but this was using June data. So looking at the economic and revenue update that just came out, in fact, it was dated September 16th, but they actually released it today. Looking at some of the numbers there, their projections, last projections were in June, and now they are updating them through September, and the economic outlook is actually a lot more better. It's not as negative as we were looking at. This is the U.S. here, you know, but unemployment increased by 1.4 million jobs in August, and the unemployment rate declined to 8.4. Just looking at some of the ones from Washington, you know, Washington's sign there's signs for future improvement in the economy. Like their September forecast is much better than they said in June. Like employment continues to rise in June, July, and August following the historic decline in March and April. Non-farm payroll rose by over 190,000 people. That's more than 82,000 more than they expected. Construction employment increased by 11,000 people. The Washington's unemployment rate declined to 8.5 from the 16.3 it was in April. And then the general fund collections were 963 million above the June estimates. So they're totally re-estimating everything out and looking at what it's going to look like in the next few years too. So, and those forecasts are a lot more positive than what I saw in the past. So there's some things to look at as far as the last quarter of this year and the first quarter of 2021, that there might be a little dips in, but other than that, it's, by the end of 21, they're forecasting that, looking at revenues and stuff pretty, equal to or even higher to 2019. But that was as of today's, and like I said, things are always changing, so we'll see. So with that, I'd like to go over some of our 21 revenue estimates. So on these next few slides, first of all, I wanted to say that when I'm looking at the estimates that we have here, and then the difference that I'm having here, I think it makes a lot more sense based off of what we actually did this year. So the difference is from the 2020 estimated amounts, not the 2020 budgeted amounts. So for example, our 2020 budget was 69, well, about the same as what we're asking for right here. It was 69,081,000, but our estimate is about 70,800,000. And again, that's a lot because of that GEMT money and also the CARES money. That's all included in there. But anyway, so first of all, overall taxes, we're looking at about a $26.9 million budget, which is down by about $282,000. And I'll go more into breakdown of that next. License and permits going up about $222,000 from what we did this year. It's about the same budget amount as what we had in there for 2019. Intergovernmental services is $6.8 million, going down about 1.9 million. Again, though, that CARES money is in there. And then charges for services, 22.9 million. Fines and forfeits, $245,000, asking to go up by $65,000. This is one that really is hurting us this year. We're just not really collecting much in there. And then miscellaneous, $6.7 million. And there's a lot, like all the capital for the equipment rental fund is included in that number. We're looking at about $90,000 increase, and then transfers going down to about $109. So overall, we're about the same budget as what we had in 2019, going down from our estimated 2020 by $1.7 million. And then just the graph here just basically shows that 69 million, most of it is from taxes and from charges. So I'll just keep going unless I hear any questions. So as far as the revenue estimates for taxes, estimated total city taxes is $26.9 million, like I stated in the previous slide. That's about $282,000 less than what we are bringing in this year. Property taxes, an increase of about $265,000. Sales taxes, an increase of about $137,000. Public safety, that this is a wash. We just have to have our expenditures and our revenues match because everything we collect goes right to the county for the jail. Criminal justice going down about $19,000 at $810. This is the EMS levy from the county is $1.5 million. Estimated TBD of going down $200,000, so $1.6 million. Hotel motel, this is one that I think I still have to look at, still might have to adjust. It was mentioned earlier that a lot of the nonprofits didn't request their funding for 2020 and this year in 2020, and that's correct. But also we didn't collect the revenues from the hotels either because they were closed for so long. So that fund this year is very doesn't have as much as we had hoped in there. So that's something that we have to look at. Just looking at the last few months and what those revenues are looking like, I might increase this one a little bit, but we'll have to look at that. So, and then utility and other, kind of keeping it right about where we are this year. Lift the $500,000, and then REIT, I was dropping down by $300,000 to 1.2 million. So that's the $26.9 million for taxes, which again, looking here, you can see the majority of that is sales and property tax.
So Doug, on your property tax, you're projecting a $265,000 increase. Is that just in new construction? Is that what we're looking at, that increase coming from?
Well, let's talk about that right now. Going over, and actually that number is, well, this will explain it more. That number is a little misleading, just based off not our budget, but what we're actually think we might get this year. And we got a lot of refunds at the beginning of the year and stuff like that. So our actual well, I'll just start here. So in the red side here, the 2020, our excess value was almost $3.8 billion. We had new construction of about 59 million, which brought in additional tax of 131. We had bank capacity of I'm missing a digit in there, but $747,000. Yes, I got an extra comma in there. And then we had a 2020, our 2020 levy was actually 7.9 million. You approved just a little over 8 million, but by the time it got to the county and they had to make some adjustments, it just dropped down to just right at $8 million. With that was the levy rate that you guys approved at 2.1059. I have not received anything from the county yet, any of the assessments for this year. So these numbers are just estimates. So our preliminary assessed value, I'm projecting to be like 3.95 billion. That's a 4% increase. I did talk to the county and ask them if they can kind of just give me an estimate, and they think that number is going to be around between 6 and 7%. So new construction, I threw in there $100,000. Again, I don't know what that's going to be. Plus, we might get some refunds too. And then I'm not including 1% allowable, and I'm also not including in this budget any bank capacity. So the new levy rate would be that $8,099,000, which is basically just this $100,000 from new, or whatever the new construction is going to be, which would bring that new levy rate from 2.1059 to 2.0502. So, you know, we looked at this, the mayor and I looked and talked about this, and we just, at this point, unless you guys want us to add those in, we certainly can. But at this point, that's, and again, and hopefully we'll receive the assessments from the county. Usually I get them the last week of September. Last year was the first week of October. Then I can have actual numbers in here. But the only thing that we're going to be requesting in there right now, at this point anyway, is just the new construction. Any questions on that?
No, I'll just say I appreciate you and the mayor kind of listening to the direction council had given, which was we didn't want to see a property tax increase this year, especially with COVID going on and the uncertainty of how that's going to play out long term and the effect that could have on families. So we appreciate you listening to that and not including that in the projections.
Okay, Mayor, you were right. All right. This is just kind of gives a graphic again on the property tax levy, what it looks like as and I got to work on these city population. I have different sources with different numbers, so I just left it the same. But as our population is increasing and our assessed value keeps increasing, our levy rate, for 2021, again, it's going to be even lower than 2020, which was lowest from I don't know how far back. So, we're projecting that rate being at 2.05. So that's good news there.
And I think that's an excellent story to tell the constituents is, your actions have kept that levy rate down. Yes, assessed value is a different conversation, but you can be confident in saying that.
All right, and then this next one slide is just, again, kind of a reminder. We don't know what's going to happen to sales tax rates for the other places. but as of right now, we have an 8.7% sales tax in the city of Mount Vernon. And the city's portion is 10% of that, or 0.85%. So you can see the majority of it, 6.5 of that 8.7 goes to the state, and then we get 10%, and the rest is distributed to scattered transit, criminal justice, the county, et cetera. So that hasn't changed at all. So it's right there. This slide you kind of went over earlier today, but this is looking at just the sales tax, the actuals. In fact, the other one is probably a little more updated than this one because I didn't have the actual numbers in here for September when I put this together. But this just shows where we are with our the sales tax amounts that we had coming in, and then what we're requesting for 21 is $7.3 million. In 19, it was 7.7, and 18, 7.4. And we're estimating right now for 2020 it'll be about 7.2. So we're looking at numbers that are, between the 17 and 18 years right now with these projections. Might be something as these looking at these economic numbers, if things keep increasing, might be something we can look at. But what we did is we put that in right now. We estimated sales tax about 5% below of what we collected in 2019. All right, and then this is just for our general, our governmental operating funds revenue. It's just a projection of which includes general fund, streets, parks, and the library funds. I won't go through all this. It's just the three of them all combined at about $34.9 million, looking at about a 1.6 decrease from our estimated 2020. As you can see in the graph here, overall our revenue, we're projecting to bringing it down closer to that 2019 level. And again, you can see the majority of the revenue that does come in for our governmental operating funds is 72% of that is from taxes. And then, and before I forget, I just wanted to mention also, if you go out into your council drive, the iDrive, and look at under budgets 2021 under revenues, you will see all of my detail of how all these things came up with little notes and stuff in there. That is not a final sheet by any means. It's just where it was a few days ago. I was playing with it even more today. But it's just something to look at if you want to see where I'm coming up with a lot of these numbers and where they came from. And it has detail of how we've been collecting things this month and past detail from other years in there too for each of the funds. So if you're interested and get bored some night, there you go. So anyway, this one here, and move as my last slide, is just on looking at some of the building related revenues, which include the building permits, the impact fee, administration, the engineering fees, the plat app fees, and the zoning subdivision fees and tech permit fees. We're looking at about $1,089,000, which is pretty close to what we had budgeted for 2020. And then, things slowed down and then they were shut down, then they took back off again. And we're estimating and bringing in about $926,000. That number is based on existing commercial and residential development permits that are currently in the permitting process and are to be completed in 21. So that's where the number we have for that one. REIT, I don't know. This is something we can keep an eye on too and look at. I estimated it coming in at $1.2 million. Now looking at some of this economic impact or economic information that came out today, maybe that number is a little low. And then fuel and liquor tax, those are actual hard numbers that come from the state that we will be collecting. So those numbers are fuel $765,000 and liquor at $488,000. So any questions on any of those?
Yeah, Doug, I was going to ask about the REIT. You started to explain it. I was curious if there was some guidance from MRSC or someone, but seems like the real estate transactions are going along well, except for low inventory.
Yeah, and and looking at that number, I tend to be a little conservative early on, but I think that's definitely, these are things you're going to see these numbers over and over before you approve this stuff, and that's probably one that can increase. So, and I appreciate any input anybody can give me. I'm like I said, this year has been kind of challenging just because of everything that's been going on, and trying to estimate what's going to be happening, a month from now, is tough enough trying to figure out what's going to happen a year from now. So anyway.
So in all reality though, Doug, the REIT fund, that's those are specific fund. Those are funds that have to be used for specific purposes. So either capital or road improvement. So the overall operations of the city, that fund, that really doesn't affect the overall operations of the city. It's more just specific projects.
Right. So actually, when the CIP has been completed, and I look at, I have to have all the funding for all the projects that are in the CIP for next year. And so making sure that everything that they have in there is funded. I have all the stuff that's in REIT. Obviously, the things that are probably then would be the paving, the paving program would probably be cut. And obviously, if those numbers come in higher, then we'll be able to do more. So, but yeah, you're absolutely correct. Those are specific, and those are both REIT numbers combined. So REIT 1 and REIT 2.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't want to get hung up thinking, REIT was going to make the difference of being able to keep somebody employed or not keep somebody employed. Those are, I was trying to point out. These
I'm sorry. Yep.
Dedicated funds that go to dedicated projects, and doesn't affect our day-to-day operations per se.
That's right. That's right. REIT 1 is for state or city capital projects, and REIT 2 can only be used for transportation projects for the city. All right. So with that, is there any questions? That's all I have.
Okay. Any final questions for Doug?
Well, sure there is. Doug, you gave us all the income. Where's all the expenditures?
I'm not telling you that yet. I can only do one thing at a time. It's already 8 o'clock. You don't want me to go there. The meeting hasn't even started yet.
Yeah.
Our next step is, though, on the 7th is our budget presentation to you. So
okay, thank you.
We will tell you then. All right. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on our agenda, item D is any council member comments tonight. Council member comments. Okay, seeing none. I think we accidentally left off committee agenda requests. The one thing that I have on my list that we haven't addressed, I think, to date is the fire exhaust system update, and so that's on the committee, on the meeting for October 7th. Any other committee agenda requests? Okay, seeing none. Don't want to miss anyone. I am going to just do a quick mayor's report. Haven't done one for a while, and so I feel like wanted to just mention a few things to our public. Today's call with public health was really encouraging. As a community, we did not necessarily see a spike over the Labor Day weekend, so bravo to everyone on really doing what we need to do to keep ourselves safe. So the current statistics that I tend to watch is the number of cases per 1,000, and that is the number that the state watches in order for us to move to an additional phase of opening. So currently phase 2, to go to phase 3, we need to be at 25 cases per 1,000, and right now we're at 34.1 per 1,000. So keep up the good work, Mount Vernon and Skagit County. Just about a month ago, we were more than quadruple that number, so we've definitely made some progress in those infection rates. What does public health have to do in order to move to the next phase with the state public health is making sure that we have healthcare system readiness in case there's surging cases, testing capacity and availability, which we have, case and contact investigations, and the ability to protect high-risk populations. Our county health department's doing a fantastic job. So it's really hinging on that number of cases per 1,000 that we have to report to the state. So the phased approach it has been updated by the governor's office as of yesterday, and so this can be found on the governor's website. You can find links from our own website. This is where we have our phases, and it talks about different things we can do. This is where the libraries are opening in phase, or allowed to open in phase 3, and so we just want to make sure that folks understand that we are following the phases as the guidelines come out from the state, and doing our best to provide services with those types of restrictions. What does that all mean? We have to do our part for sure. And people have heard this a lot, but I think what I'm finding is some of the discussions, even with the leaders, are, we're all tired of COVID, and because we're tired, we're going to just ignore what we're supposed to do. If it just gets old, it can't get old. We've got to be resilient. So the mask, staying 6 feet apart, washing your hands. The highest infection rates right now in Skagit County, which would apply, of course, to Mount Vernon, are gatherings of people. So reminder of gathering with no more than 5 people outside of your household. I'm glad we can go out to restaurants and things like that, maybe not with the rain, but it just doesn't mean that things are normal and we can gather. So be really smart and safe. Consider getting to phase 3 and keeping businesses in business. One thing I wanted to share that was, it really kind of upset me. I received a mailer in my mail the other day. It was incredibly misleading. And so I wanted to bring it to the attention of our public. In looking in Google on this, it's actually been brought to the attention by lots of cities around the country, not just ours. But this mailing is from it says the U.S. Deputy Sheriff's Association. It says that they're asking for donations so that they can urgently provide equipment shortages from jurisdictions that are not funding their police departments. Specifically, it says that essential equipment is being cut back. And I wanted to make sure our public knew that the city has absolutely no affiliation with this group. We are not short on emergency equipment that is needed for our law enforcement. On the back of their mailer, it actually says contributions do not go directly to law enforcement agencies. So please, buyer beware. Before you contribute to things, consider checking them out. Call us directly if you have questions. But I got kind of ticked off about this because it's really taking advantage of some national conversations now and taking advantage of people to send money. So please know that your Mount Vernon Police Department is funded at the appropriate level, especially for safety equipment. And lastly, I just wanted to give thanks to Representative Deborah Lekanoff. She's with our 40th Legislative District. She came and visited Mount Vernon Police Department on September 10. Chief Kamek put together an outstanding educational few hours for her. Also joining via Zoom was our Northwest Regional Representative for Governor Inslee, Joe Timmons, Chief Kamek, and we kind of filed in safely officers to talk about everything from our Culshan Creek Neighborhood Resource Officer Program, school resource officers, patrol, our embedded social worker, police volunteers, detectives, technology, and of course, our longstanding Citizens Academy program. I felt it really, really important to ask our legislators to come in. I'm really challenging them to learn before they legislate. I think that's the only responsible way to be an elected official. Deborah currently sits on our policing policy and leadership team in Olympia, led by Representative Roger Goodman, who is the chair of the House Public Safety Committee. So as Olympia considers reform and different types of legislation, I think Deborah learned a lot. She was really impacted by the day spent with us. I have some quotes in our newsletter that's coming out. But one of the biggest and impactful experiences was the shoot, no shoot simulator training. This training she participated in. It's something our officers do several times per year and gives realistic experience through technology of those split seconds decisions. Even the officers training with her that day remarked that even they have a lot of stress that comes involved in those situations because she certainly felt it. And I think that really impacted her. So I can't thank her enough for spending the time. One of the only legislators that agreed to come spend time with us. So appreciate it very much. And that's all I have for a mayor's report tonight. Okay, now moving on to our action items tonight, our new business. Item A is our Skagit PUD update. And the Skagit Public Utility District, of course, is our water utility in our county. And General Manager George Sidhu has been patiently waiting with us on our Zoom call for a couple of hours to give an update to council. And so I'm just going to introduce him and thank him so much for being here tonight. George.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I just shared my screen, so hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep.
I'm going to pull that up. Let's see, start this slide. There we go. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I always welcome the opportunity to talk about the PUD. It's just always hard to find people that will sit and listen to it. So I'm happy to take this opportunity now. I'm excited to talk about what the PUD is doing and what we're doing to build a secure water future. I know the meeting's already been 2 hours, so I'll go through my slides. I'll try and be efficient. But I will do a little bit of a refresher for those of you that know about the PUD, a little bit of education. And then I want to talk about some of the projects and programs that we have going on at the PUD. Feel free to interrupt me at any time to ask questions. I'll try and pause a little bit between slides. And then as also at the end, you can ask questions as well. So to remind everybody, the PUD actually serves 9 different water systems in Skagit County. This is a map that shows all the different systems that we serve. And in the 3 cities in the Lower Valley, we're used to what we call the Judy system, that large blue shaded area. But we own and operate systems upriver. We have 2 in Concrete, Skagit View Village and Cedar Grove. We also own and operate systems in Rockport and Marble Mount. And then if you look to the north, there is a small system in Alger that we own and operate. And then to the west, we manage the Fidalgo system. And over on Guimas Island, we own and operate a reverse osmosis plant where we treat salt water and turn it into drinking water for residents on Guimas Island. So we do have a wide expanse. We serve about 26,000 customers, roughly about 70,000 people. And that is our service area. So moving on, a little bit more education about our system. These are photos of Judy Reservoir up in the Cultus Mountains. I think some of you attended a elected officials tour up at Judy Reservoir a couple of years ago. We had intended to do more of those tours this summer, actually, and unfortunately with COVID, weren't able to do that. But Judy Reservoir is our raw water reservoir. It was built in 1947, and we get our raw water from 5 different sources, 4 streams in the Cultus Mountains, as well as the Skagit River. And it can hold roughly 5 months of raw water. So that the water in Judy Reservoir is not what gets piped down to our customers. That water then goes through our treatment plant and then is provided to our customers after it is treated. So our treatment plant has a capacity. There's some statistics listed on the screen here, but the biggest advantage that Mount Vernon, Cedar Woolley, and Burlington and a lot of the Lower Valley has is that we have a lot of reliability and redundancy in our water system with this reservoir. So something to take note of, something that's unique with this PD system. I'm going to talk about some projects, and all projects start with money. As Doug really went over a lot about your finances earlier, our finances are also always come into question. So we are currently undertaking a lot of capital projects. We have a lot of life cycle replacement projects to do. We have over 600 miles of pipeline, and it takes a lot of investment to make sure our system is reliable. So what we have done recently is we adopted a 10-year capital plan, which is layered upon with a 10-year financial plan to fund all of those projects. And so this slide is just a snapshot of our capital investments that we want to make in a 5-year period since we adopted this last year. And it's a lot of money. What the PUD is going to be investing for our customers in the next 10 years is about $160 million. In the next 3 years is about 70 million of that. And in some subsequent slides, I'll let you know which projects the bulk of that money will take up. But we are making some heavy investments in our system to make sure that we replace our assets and they give us the useful life that we expect out of them. Some of the projects that we will be spending money on as far as our capital plan. First and foremost is our water treatment plant. So some of you might recognize this photo. This is the treatment plant up at Judy Reservoir. It was built in 1990, so it's now 30 years old, and we are now making investments to try and get another 30 years out of this plant. So we are not rebuilding our treatment plant. We are making upgrades and improvements and looking at everything. We did a condition assessment of this plant last year, looking at the mechanical systems, the electrical, the chemical, the process, structural even. And so we are budgeting approximately $15 million in the next 10 years to upgrade this plant to get another 30 years of life out of it. One major project that we are embarking on, and really it's going to start later this fall, is a new transmission line. And what we call it is the Judy Reservoir to Mount Vernon transmission line. And we are in phase 2 of that. So what we currently have, the Judy Reservoir in this photo is up in the top right corner, and the city of Mount Vernon is down in the bottom left. And the city of Mount Vernon is currently served by a 24-inch diameter pipeline that was built in 1961. And we are in need of replacement for that line. If you can remember back this summer and then summer of 2019, we've had leaks on this transmission line, and we've had to shut it down completely a couple of times in the last 2 years. So we are at the end of its service life. And this is phase 2 that we will be starting to work on soon. In the lower left, you can see a different colored dashed line slightly within the city limits of Mount Vernon. That was phase 1 that was done back in 2008. But this red and orange dashed line is 5 miles of 36-inch pipe. So we're making the pipe bigger, and we're building it from a different material. Probably we're going to use steel. And this pipeline will get us, hopefully, another 50 years out of this pipe. We're going to bid in October of this year, with construction occurring over the next 2 years at a cost of what we're hoping to be about $30 million. We're estimating in the low 30 millions, but we're hoping we get some good bids based on the economic climate and some hungry contractors. And so later this year, we'll know where the bids come in. But this is one of the most important projects on our capital improvement plan. One of the things that we are also doing now at the PUD is having a lot more communication with our public and partners. One example of that is exactly what I'm doing now. I'm taking the time and making the effort and making sure that I go and visit the local cities, the county, other local agencies like the Rotary, Chambers, and I'm giving them a presentation similar to this. I'm educating them on the projects that we have going on and just trying to get more involved in the community to strengthen the engagement with our customers. And this is big for us. It's something that the board wanted to do, and it's something that I really take seriously, is to strengthen the relationship with our partners. Things that we're doing, if you are a PUD customer, you've possibly been on a public tour up at the Judy Reservoir. We do school tours, we do elected officials tours, so we're making the site more accessible so people learn about where their water is coming from. In terms of our operations, we now have online bill pay. We have interactive voice response. If you call to the PUD, you will get the automatic message that will help direct your call, and that's definitely helped our customer service representatives do their business. And we just recently, this summer, implemented paperless billing. So we're definitely trying to keep strides with technology and improve our services. One thing with this communication is that we're trying to work on more regional issues as well. So I want to update you on some of the larger, broader issues that we're tackling at the PUD. We have a plan to go to Olympia to do some water line extension projects that will be state funded. And so this is a map that shows 3 water line extension projects that we would like to complete with state funded money. These are intended to help solve some of the rural water issues that we have in Skagit County. So these projects aren't within the city of Mount Vernon city limits, but they are water supply issues that impact all of our customers and all of the residents of Skagit County. And so what we have done, we've identified these 3 projects. We have focused on the Little Mountain Extension project at the top of this map. And in 2019, we went to the state legislature and we requested money to fund that project, and we received $1.3 million in design funds. So we are currently in design, and we next year will ask for the remainder of the $4.7 million for construction money. We're hoping to have a shovel-ready project ready for construction next year. The reason we selected these projects are because we've had customers or landowners that live on these roads or in these areas, and the issues that come up are that their wells have poor quality water, or that their wells dry up in the summertime during low flows, or that they own property in these areas and they can't develop them because of the well drilling moratorium that's imposed upon Skagit County. So we are trying to help with some of the solutions, and these are 3 projects which we think will help these areas. It's not going to be a solution for the entire county, but these will help the area that these water lines will serve, and then we can own and maintain these water lines in perpetuity. So this is one example of some public projects that we are trying to get involved with. Other ones are bulk water fill stations. We are making access to bulk water more easily for people that don't have year-round access to water. They can also be used by contractors or farmers as well. So we have them located in Bow Hill, Conway, and then we just opened one in Cedro-Woolley as well. And they've been very popular. They operate like an ATM. That photo on the left, you can see people get prepaid cards and they can pull up with their vehicles. They can slide the card, select how many gallons of water they want, and it will fill their vessel. So these have been pretty successful, especially the one down in Conway has been used the most. Other things that we're doing at the PUD are working more with our agricultural customers. Agriculture is a big part of the economy in Skagit County, and we've worked with the irrigators and the farmers for a number of years. We've had in the last 5 years, we've had 2 years where the governors declared a drought in 2015 and in 2019. And in both of those years, we temporarily transferred some of our water rights to irrigators on Fur Island to help them with the irrigation of their farm fields. Those are successful. This year, we implemented a new, first time ever, a agricultural water rate to our customers. So if they are an agricultural type of business and they meet one of our cross-connection control requirements, they will get a better rate on their water consumption, because typically those customers use a lot more water, and we want them to have at least a little bit of an advantage, because we understand that the business and the work that they do is important to the economy. So we wanted to give them a little bit of a break on the water rate, and that's been going well as well. And I'm going to cut it off there to see if anybody has any questions, or if there might be a question on something I didn't cover as well. I tried to keep this brief, but if there's some other issues that you know about that you want to ask me, feel free.
Okay. Any questions for George on this particular item? I think you're filling up Judy Reservoir right now, so that's a good thing. It sounds like it.
Yes, it is. It's close to full, so we like that.
Okay. Well, if there's no questions, we want to thank George for sticking with us tonight and making sure that council is informed about a very important thing in the city. So we appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for reaching out to people. Yeah.
Great. Okay. We will move on then. Item B tonight. This is an emergency adoption of interim regulations regarding severe weather shelters. And Rebecca Lowell from Development Services is here to present this item. Rebecca.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As you are aware, in 2019, Council adopted 3 different ordinances authorizing, with conditions, severe weather shelters. I did attach all 3 of those previous ordinances to your Council packets. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the timelines that allow these regulations to be in effect have expired. So to allow the regulations to be in effect, a new ordinance needs to be adopted by Council. And as such, staff is asking that Council adopt the ordinance that was provided to you that is declaring an emergency and adopting interim regulations to allow severe weather shelters.
Okay, I know this has been for Council quite a bit. Any questions for Rebecca on this?
So these interim regulations, they allow any organization really to apply for that. I mean, the county opened up a cold weather shelter, and there's been some other organizations. It doesn't limit it to just faith-based, correct?
This ordinance allows a little more flexibility than the next ordinance that we're going to discuss. And hold on just a moment, I'll find it in your ordinance.
Seems to me the last time we passed it, it was almost the next day the mayor declared a state of emergency due to cold weather, and the county opened up, I believe it was the same day, a cold weather center at the or shelter at the senior center. So I believe this covers that and allows for more of that.
It does. So I just found this here. So the severe weather shelter is a building that can be owned or operated by a religious establishment, fraternal organization, public agency, or other entity that meets basic building safety standards for temporarily housing homeless persons. So yes, correct. It is. It does expand beyond just our faith-based organizations.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'd move the adoption of ordinance 3811.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion by Mark and a second by Melissa. All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes, or ordinance passes. Thank you. Item C, the emergency adoption of interim regulations, limited temporary homeless encampments. And again, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mayor. So again, as the council is aware, the city does have existing regulations that allow permanent homeless shelters and temporary homeless encampments. However, the city does not have regulations that would permit the homeless to park overnight in a vehicle at a facility. Programs that allow this type of use are generally referred to as safe parking. In 2019, similar to the last agenda item, Council adopted 2 different ordinances that authorized with conditions safe parking programs. Again, both of those previous ordinances were attached to your packets. And again, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the timelines that allow these regulations to be effective have expired. So to allow these regulations to be in effect, staff is bringing a new ordinance back before council this evening and asking you to adopt it. There were two items I did want to just briefly touch on that were brought up in public comments that I'm thinking council may have questions about. One of the items that was changed in this ordinance, your previous ordinance had a maximum number of 5 vehicles that could be on a site. That has been changed in the ordinance that's before council this evening so that it's consistent with a new state law that had been passed. So the regulation that we are allowed to place on these types of facilities now would be to allow 1 safe parking space for every 10 spaces that were in a church parking lot. So because this is an emergency ordinance, and I do have an organization who is looking at possibly wanting to site one of these facilities, I really wanted to get this before council as quickly as we could. And so just mirrored the state law exactly what that was putting in there. And just to give you a quick example of what that would mean, I just quickly had looked at the Catholic Church just because that was the one I was most familiar with, and they have 110 existing parking spaces in that lot. So with this new ordinance, would allow up to 11 parking spaces. So just to give you a perspective of what we're looking at there. And then with regard to just one other comment too, and this is something that's unfortunately, it's sort of a, I don't know how else to best get this educational component out to the public, but the city already has regulations that allow permanent shelters for the homeless in many parts of the city. I'm happy to email back out to council, although you guys have seen this a number of times from us, a flow chart that really gives you the information regarding all of the different zones in the city that do allow homeless shelters. I think sometimes when we bring these ordinances before you, the public thinks that this is the only venue that these facilities can be located in the city, and that really couldn't be further from the truth. This is just a different way that these can be permitted in the city. So with that, I'm hoping council makes a motion to adopt the ordinance before you.
Okay, questions for Rebecca on this one?
Just a clarification, or for my own edification, we've had some interest in maybe some other organizations, whether they're private or government, operating safe parking. If that comes forward in a few weeks, would we be able to reconsider that then? I'm not asking to delay this one and reconsider that at the moment, but just if another proposal comes forward that isn't consistent currently.
I'm going to hope I'm answering your question. I think this will, and if not, of course, you'll let me know. So this is, as a temporary ordinance, we are required by law to come back before you within 60 days to have a public hearing at that time. Ordinarily, when we do that, we're going to bring back the exact same set of regulations before you to adopt, because we frankly wouldn't have much time unless it was a pretty simple change, you know, to change something to bring it back before you. But this will have to go through a process, a legislative process after the 60-day hearing, within which that's where council, where you would make those suggested changes. I mean, if there are things in the code that you think need to be amended, but until that code is amended, it really would depend on what sort of deviation somebody else who came forward was looking at. In general, just big picture, we do have what our city attorney always, just the off-ramp, so that in general, we look at these facilities, and unless it's really a very serious life safety issue, we've always been able to find a way to get them approved. So it would have to be something pretty significant for us not to be able to approve what they were looking at. So I'm sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, more detail would help, and it does still have to go through the legislative process, and that's in front of us. So
I think what's been challenging is it's a bit of a chicken egg. We haven't had people step forward with, I mean, yes, expressing interest, but not really taking any action steps towards this. And I think if anyone did, we'd be very thrilled that people would want to do this. So, and as Rebecca said, we tend to bend over backwards on, you know, helping them through just the simple code that we do have to make it come to fruition. So, I don't think it's fair to characterize the public to characterize the city as not wanting to do anything but faith-based organizations. It's like, it's a place to start. And if someone were to come forward and be serious about doing this, we would be thrilled. So I don't know if that's the characterization that I kind of feel like. I don't know if council would agree. But.
No, I would agree with the mayor on that. I know that some of the emails, at least that I received, they were talking about, why isn't the county allowing parking? Why isn't the schools allowing parking? They named a number of different organizations or government entities that could allow parking. And I would say to that they haven't approached us or approached the city to ask how that could be done. If that was a partnership that the counties or the school district or anybody else was interested in developing, then that was something that they would need to bring forward to us.
Okay, any other questions for Rebecca? If council wanted to take action, this would be ordinance 3812. Sorry.
I'd like to move to approve ordinance 3812.
Second.
Right, motion by Mary and a second by Gary. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you so much. All right, item D tonight is an interlocal agreement with Skagit County, and this is Isaac Huffman, our library director, is here to present. Hi, Isaac.
Hey, thank you, everybody. As you know, each year we have an agreement with Skagit County to provide library services to unincorporated residents. They give us a little bit amount of money to support our collection, and in return, we give a discounted rate on our unincorporated library cards to county residents. This year, the allocation amount is $14,054, just like a hair down from last year, so a really similar number. So we're happy with that. It's a competitive process between the different library districts. So, we send in our stats and, we get allocation thereof. So it shows a good, strong, consistent stats in our library. So with that, I would ask you to support an interlocal agreement with Skagit County to provide library services to unincorporated residents.
All right, any questions for Isaac on this? Okay.
I'll move that we approve the interlocal agreement with Skagit County to provide library services to unincorporated residents of Skagit County.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Mary, didn't hear second from Iris? We'll give second. Okay, we'll give a second to Iris. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you.
Item E tonight is a bid award for the 2020 curb ramp improvements. Bill Bullock is here and Esco Bell to back clean up if he needs to. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. So this is our curb ramp phase of our street improvement program that was separated a little different than our paving phase that was approved by council previously. We again we're very pleased with the bids we received. The total bid for all three bid schedules, A, B, and C, came in at $476,280. Quite a bit lower than we expected from 2019 prices. But real quick, I want to describe what schedules A, B, and C are. So schedule A is our TIB Complete Streets grant phase, scope of work that we're going to be doing. And that generally is curb ramps and sidewalk improvements along Division. Schedule B is the curb ramp and sidewalk improvements associated with the 2020 street improvement program paving that we're doing now. There are a variety of curb ramps we need to provide improvements for. And then Schedule C is anticipating some of the projects that are scheduled for next year's paving program, mainly in the Fox Hill Estates and East Wind area and a few others. The idea there being is that we have good prices. Let's knock off as many of these as we can and forward some of that cost savings onto what we may be doing next year. So then the funding for this is primarily made up of the $350,000 we received from TIB to do complete streets work. Now, with that funding, if we don't use all of it, which we wouldn't have used all of it for this scope of work, which is Schedule A. We don't have to give that money back. We can use that money on other projects within the city, on qualified arterials, collector streets, within the same type of scope of work. And that's exactly what we're doing with additional curb ramps and sidewalk improvements. And then the rest of the funding for this is covered by TBD funds. I did check with Doug earlier today to make sure that the TBD fund that we have now is still healthy enough to cover these costs to do all three schedules. So we're asking the council and recommending that we move forward with awarding schedules A, B, and C to Trinity Construction, which was the low bid we received, and proceed with the project. Any questions?
Any questions for Bill?
No, I'd just like to make a comment. Well, I'll have a question for ESCO in a minute, but I'd like to make a comment. When we're talking about these curb ramp improvements, a lot of the public may not realize what we're talking about is making them ADA compatible. We're under obligation by the federal government to bring all of our crosswalks, all of our curbs and sidewalks to ADA compatible, and we've had an ongoing issue to do that. And so this is just part of that, which is great. But the question I had for ESCO is, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, you kind of gave us an overall inventory of the number of curb ramp improvements we needed to do. Could you maybe give us an update on how many of those we've picked off and how many we have left? And if you can't do it now, maybe the next Public Works meeting.
Yeah, how about I do that at the next Public Works Committee meeting? We've also got a complete transition plan that we have drafted, and so we can give you all that kind of information. It'd be easier at the next Public Works Committee meeting.
I think the other thing that needs to be recognized too is that not only is the city doing this, but if the state comes in and they're doing improvements on a state route, they're making those improvements. If we have a developer that's doing some work in the sidewalk work and things like that, they're also doing making those sidewalks and ramps ADA compliant. So it's a joint effort to get this done and in compliance with state law or federal law.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would like to know, actually, I'm with you, Mark. Like, it feels like we've done about 4,000 curbs. So it would be great to know where we're at with that. So
well,
excellent
that's true.
suggestion.
Both of the corridors, Riverside and College Way, are two big examples where that was just part of the work, but all those modernization of those signals included ADA ramps all along those two big arterials. And then we're always, every time we're doing a paving program, we automatically upgrade all the ADA ramps associated with where we're doing our overlays. So, we've covered a lot of ground. Then when you get this $350,000 grant, that added a whole bunch more. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adopt this curb ramp program for $476,280.
Second.
Thank you. So a motion by Mark and a second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any opposed? Thank you so much. Motion carries. All right. F is our for the good of the order. And I think we kind of covered that in our finance part of it. But is there any questions about the COVID response from any of our staff that are still on the phone? Okay, holding steady. Everyone just keep doing what we're supposed to do. All right, that completes our agenda items. Kevin, is there a need for an executive session this evening?
No.
All right, then. With that, we will be adjourned. All those smiles, I see them. We'll be adjourned at 8:42. Thank you.
Everybody have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you.